Hi everyone, this is Kelly. Today's bond is with the Shavers, and it is extremely dark. Before we begin, please note that this video is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Some content may be sensitive for certain viewers, so consider this your disclaimer. And finally, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thanks a lot. Laurie and Michael Shaver were high school sweethearts who met in 7th grade after Laurie moved to New York, where Michael was already living. The school was relatively small, with about 500 students, which meant relationships were tight-knit. But Laurie and Michael's bond was closer than most, and their attraction was obvious to everyone around them from day one. But could this deep connection also become a source of future tragedy? It wasn't long before Michael got to know Laurie's family, and their relationship seemed to earn a degree of acceptance, especially because Laurie's family knew their daughter was not someone easily fooled. Laurie excelled in school, always getting high grades, while Michael struggled a bit more in high school. Eventually, Michael dropped out, while Laurie continued her education, deciding to earn a diploma. When Laurie's parents noticed just how attached she was to Michael, they decided to sit him down. They were worried about their daughter's future with him, and pointed out that he might not be able to get a good job without a degree. Motivated by his love for Laurie, Michael decided to get his GED. After graduating, he earned his pilot's license and landed a job as a cargo pilot. In 2006, they got married, and life seemed good, or at least that's what those around them thought. After they welcomed their daughter, Isabella, Laurie and Michael decided to move to Florida. But it wasn't long before they returned to New York. When Michael got back, he realized he no longer wanted to continue his career as a cargo pilot. Instead, he enrolled in an engineering program, electrical maintenance, which required intense studying, and he was able also to success in his second challenge. Eventually, they decided to move back to Florida, where Michael landed a job as a monorail technician at Disney World. After securing this job, the couple lived in a trailer on a 5-acre property located at 9850 Sandy Pines Road in Claremont, Florida, about 33 miles west of Orlando. This job was tough to get, and although it provided him with a decent income, Michael still earned less than Laurie. She always held the upper hand. Their marriage was constantly strained, and rarely without daily arguments. Laurie was often described as harsh and even cruel. Michael sometimes called her selfish. Despite his usually calm nature and his constant patience with Laurie's unbearable behavior, Michael often found himself feeling helpless, a storm brewing inside. At times, his clenched fists and forced smiles were the only signs of his growing frustration, until even he couldn't contain it any longer. It was early on 2014 when Michael suddenly called their neighbor to come to their home to try to calm Laurie after an argument between them. But the neighbor was shocked when she saw Michael's face. It was full of bruises and cuts, yet he was still trying to calm Laurie down. The neighbor took a photo of Michael. She knew that Laurie may go to police, so she wants the police to know how tough Laurie was in the argument. Eventually, when Laurie noticed that there will be a witness, she backed out and didn't leave the house, yet she was still planning for more violence. By September 2014, Laurie asked Michael to do some home repair, yet as most of the men will do, he told her that he will be doing it later. Yet this answer was not Laurie expected, and she began screaming, accusing Michael of being useless, saying he was less than any real man and couldn't even help with the simplest of things. As usual, Michael tried to calm her, yet she started to push him away and tried to hit him. Yet this time, Michael responded to her with the same language she understood the violence. After the altercation, Laurie went to the police and accused Michael of assaulting her. The medical report revealed bruises on Laurie's arms and eye, as well as scattered bruises on her body. When the police arrived, they found Michael also had a cut on his head and bruises on his arm. Michael insisted that she was the one who started by throwing a vase at him, and that he tried to calm her down. He claimed she then pulled out her Cobra .38 CBA pistol revolver, and he struggled to disarm her. Later, she pulled out another gun and struck him on the head. In the end, Michael was charged with domestic assault, but the charges were dropped after he agreed to complete a 1-year diversion program, which he managed to finish in just 6 months. This incident marked a breaking point in their turbulent relationship, turning their private battles into a public matter. What once seemed like just another troubled marriage now became a case for the authorities. After this incident, Michael did not return home. He moved to live in a hangar at his workplace. During this time, one of his colleagues noticed the bruises on his face, and Michael opened up to her about what had happened. Their relationship quickly grew closer, and soon they began dating. When Laurie found out about this, she did not confront Michael directly. Instead, she went to human resources at Disney to report the relationship between her husband and his colleague. This eventually led to Michael ending his relationship with his colleague and returning home in May 2015. It would have been natural for Laurie to try to reconnect with Michael and work together to fix the problems between them. But Laurie didn't take that path. Instead, she acted as though Michael was an unchangeable part of her life, like he was a right she was entitled to, not someone she needed to fight for. Her lack of effort only deepened the cracks in their relationship, making it harder to find any common ground. It was as if Laurie expected things to resolve themselves without acknowledging the role she played in their endless cycle of conflict. On November 7th, Frank, Michael's friend from work, invited the couple to meet up with a group of other friends. Although everyone else was enjoying themselves, there was a lot of tension between Michael and Laurie, tension that everyone around them noticed that day. They weren't talking or even looking at each other, and whenever Laurie's eyes did meet Michael's, she gave him a cold stare, as if to tell everyone that this man was nothing more than her possession. Laurie was trying to show everyone that no one could take anything from her without her consent, especially since everyone present already knew what had happened between Michael and his colleague, and what Laurie had done to get rid of her. On November 9th, Frank received a message from Michael claiming he was going to Georgia to save his marriage and wouldn't be returning to work, offering his tools to Frank, a message that immediately struck Frank as odd. When Frank received the message, he felt something was off. The writing style was different from Michael's usual way of communicating. Also, Michael had never mentioned being involved with anyone in Georgia, and what did going to Georgia have to do with saving his marriage? Frank thought Michael might have sent the message in anger, or that something else was going on. On November 10th, Michael did not show up at work. When Frank asked their supervisor, John, he said that Michael had sent him a strange message, saying that he was quitting effective immediately, and that John could either fire him or consider it a resignation. Frank felt something was definitely wrong. Michael had fought hard to get this job, so why would he leave it in such a sudden and strange way? Frank decided that he needed to visit Michael at his first opportunity. On November 13th, Frank went to Michael's house, but he wasn't there. Laurie told him that Michael had left for Georgia with another woman after they had a fight because she discovered another woman's number on his phone. Laurie tried to appear deeply affected by losing Michael forever, but Frank interrupted this act with a simple, logical question. How could Michael have gone to Georgia when his car was still parked here? Laurie stammered and said that a friend, Robert, had taken him in a black SUV. Frank felt something wasn't right. He tried to call Michael, but his phone was turned off. On the same day, around 5 p.m., one of the neighbors told Laurie that there was a terrible smell, and he suspected it was coming from her backyard. Laurie told him she had no idea about the smell, but promised she would check it out. The very next day, the same neighbor noticed that 2 pigs had been placed in the backyard near the fire pit that Michael had been working on. On November 17th, Laurie approached the same neighbor to tell him she had checked on the smell and that it was coming from the pigs. But the neighbor, with a look of confusion on his face, said, "You brought the pigs the next day. I think there's another reason for the smell." Laurie met his gaze with indifference, brushed it off, and walked away. The news of Michael leaving his home, abandoning his wife and children, did not go unnoticed among his circle of friends and family. Everyone was shocked, as they knew Michael well and knew how much he loved his children. More importantly, Michael had always been the epitome of responsibility. Laurie, on the other hand, had many different stories about Michael's disappearance, and each story seemed to change, depending on who was listening. To Michael's family, Laurie said that he had left because she was abusive, and he fled. To their friends, she claimed that he had left her for another woman. When Michael's family heard the news, they couldn't believe it. They tried to reach out to him, but his phone was always off. On Facebook, he responded to his sister by saying, "You should all leave me alone, just like you've always done." From time to time, Michael would post some pictures on Facebook. As time passed, everyone seemed to forget about Michael's disappearance, or at least, that's what Laurie saw it. About 4 months after Michael's disappearance, Laurie was dropping her daughter off at school when she caught sight of a tall, handsome man with undeniable charisma, the perfect example of an alpha male. His name was Jeremy. Laurie, who felt she needed to start over after Michael's disappearance, tried to show her interest in him. To Jeremy, Laurie was nothing more than a fling, an intimate relationship without any strings attached, purely for pleasure. Laurie, on the other hand, had decided that Jeremy was going to be her new man, despite knowing that he was married and that he hadn't even hinted at having any feelings for her. Less than 2 months later, Jeremy was shocked to discover that Laurie had tattooed his nickname, Jay, on her private area. This move was a major red flag for Jeremy, and he immediately ended their relationship. Laurie couldn't understand why the relationship ended, but she assumed it might be because his wife, Vanessa, had started to suspect something. So, Laurie decided to confirm Vanessa's suspicions by sending her a message on Facebook from Michael's account. But Jeremy's wife didn't see the message. The next day, Laurie sent a bouquet of flowers to Vanessa's workplace with a note that read, "Roses are red, violets are blue, my wife is a whore, your husband is too. Sorry about this. Check your Facebook message. We need to talk, Mike." Vanessa, embarrassed in front of her co-workers, hid the card and went on Facebook to find that Laurie had messaged her from Michael's account. Laurie had sent her some screenshots of conversations between herself and Jeremy, claiming that she got them after installing a spy app on his phone. Vanessa confronted her husband, who admitted to his affair with Laurie, but insisted that he had ended it and that Laurie meant nothing to him. In the end, it seemed that things between Laurie and Jeremy were over for good, or at least, that's what Jeremy saw it. During this time, Laurie did not file any claim against Michael for child support. When one of her friends asked her why, Laurie said, "I don't think Michael walks this earth anymore." Her friend assumed she meant that he had disappeared from their lives and that no one knew where he was. In 2017, Laurie met Travis, and they quickly fell in love. They wanted to celebrate their love by getting married, but there was one thing standing in the way. Laurie was still legally married to Michael. Instead of going to court to file for divorce, Laurie suggested they hold an unofficial wedding ceremony. They chose the backyard as the location, right near the fire pit Michael had been working on. In late January 2018, Michael's mother became seriously ill and was hospitalized in critical condition. Michael's sister searched everywhere for him so he could come and see his mother, possibly for the last time. The first person she reached out to was Scott, Michael's close friend, who told her that he hadn't spoken to Michael in 2 years, but he noticed that Michael was still active on Facebook. Scott, trying to get in touch with Michael, logged into Facebook to send him a message, but he was hit with a shocking discovery. Michael posted a picture, stating it was recent and from a fishing trip, but Scott recognized it as a photo he had taken of Michael back in 2014. Realizing something was wrong, Scott did some digging among their close friends and found out that Laurie had told different stories about Michael's disappearance. On February 15th, 2018, Scott decided to contact the police and request a wellness check on his close friend, explaining that he hadn't heard from Michael in 2 years and that he suspected it was Laurie who was using Michael's account. The police received the call and he decided to visit Michael's house. On February 16th, 2018, the police went to Michael's house and were met by Laurie, who was very cooperative. She explained the layout of the house and even helped them search, pointing out areas they hadn't checked yet. She also insisted that she hadn't met Michael since 2014 and didn't know anything about him since then. During this time, the officers started to believe that Laurie might not be involved in Michael's disappearance, and they thought the call might have been unfounded. But as they began to leave the house and headed towards the backyard, Laurie's face turned pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. One of the officers noticed these changes in Laurie and started to examine the backyard more closely. When they reached the fire pit, it was like a storm had suddenly gathered. Near the fire pit, there was a concrete pad that didn't look like any ordinary concrete pad. It was 2 inches thick and measured 3 feet by 6 feet, with a brown discoloration that resembled a shallow grave, almost outlining the shape and direction of a body. They also found that a new layer of concrete had recently been poured around it. At that moment, the officer looked at Laurie and asked, "Would you mind if we brought in a cadaver dog to ensure everything is all right?" By this point, Laurie had reached a breaking point. She demanded that the police leave her house immediately, saying she no longer welcomed them there. The officers left the house, knowing they would be back very soon. On March 9th, 2018, the police obtained a warrant to search the house, and this time, they didn't need Laurie permission to brought the cadaver dogs. The cadaver dogs, which can detect the scent of bodies from as far as 30 feet away, found their task easy at Laurie's house. As soon as they approached the concrete pad, they began barking, signaling to the police that there was indeed a body, and that Laurie was now the prime suspect in the crime. Immediately, the police brought the necessary equipment to dig up the backyard. They found a body wearing shorts and underwear, wrapped in a bedsheet. From this moment on, the police began to uncover a series of lies that were all meant to maintain the image of Michael Douglas Shaver as an irresponsible father who had abandoned his family to start a new life with another woman. A DNA sample was taken from the body and matched with Michael's father's DNA, confirming that the body found was that of Michael Douglas Shaver. The autopsy report indicated that the death occurred sometime between November 7th, 2015 and November 10th, 2015. The cause of death was a gunshot to the back of the head from an .83 pistol revolver. On the other hand, the investigators had a challenging task ahead. They needed to trace Michael's movements nearly 3 years after his disappearance. However, they were determined to get to the bottom of the case. The investigators scrutinized every statement Laurie made, trying to prove them false. Laurie claimed she hadn't seen Michael since 2014, which was proven to be a lie because there were witnesses who saw them together at the gathering organized by Frank after that date. She also claimed that Michael was using Facebook and was active on it, but investigators proved this was false as well. Both Michael and Laurie used the same IP address to log into Facebook. The investigators determined that Michael's last phone call was on November 7th at 5:48 p.m., made from inside the house. Michael's driver's license, passport, and airline transport pilot, ATP, had all expired. In 2016, he was targeted in a civil action for not paying his credit card debt, but the notice was never served because no one could find him. The investigation also revealed that Laurie had received a check from Michael's loan, which she cashed and used to buy lingerie and other items. Laurie also sold Michael's personal firearms and tools in December 2015. All of this evidence was more than enough to bring Laurie to trial. However, in late 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic occurred, and she was not prosecuted at that time. On September 17, 2020, Laurie Shaver was arrested. She faced charges of second-degree murder and accessory after the fact to second-degree murder. Bail was set at $52,000, which she paid, allowing her to be free once again. The case of Michael's disappearance and the discovery of his body almost 3 years later gained attention across the entire country, not just in Florida. However, Laurie refused to let things end there. In 2021, she published this video on YouTube.
My name is Laurie Filmer, also known as Laurie Shaver, and as my attorney, Mr. Wiggs, has just stated, he is representing me for the charges of second-degree murder of my ex-husband, Michael Shaver. I'm coming before you guys today just to let you know that we have our suspicions, but I don't know why I've been targeted, why I've been set up, or charged with this heinous crime. I am not guilty. And anybody that knows me knows that my life is my children. I am a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a neighbor, I'm a servant of God, I'm a wife, and I am a devoted mother of 4. My life is my children. The well-being of my children has and always will be my top priority. And that is the reason that I would never cause any harm to the father of my children. And I know that there's people out there that are trying to paint this picture of me, but that's not me. I'm loving, I'm caring, I have a servitude heart. I don't judge people. I accept all, and I always try to see the good in everybody. And right now, I am up against something that I would have never imagined possible.
In the video, Laurie essentially contradicted everything about her involvement. As the trial began, Laurie felt that escaping punishment seemed impossible, so she came up with a story that even the devil himself wouldn't dare to imagine. Laurie claimed that Michael came home in November 2015, and they argued, during which he assaulted her. At that moment, their 7-year-old daughter, Isabel, was getting ready for school. When she saw her father attacking her mother, she went to her mother's room, got the gun, and shot her father in the head. However, he was still alive. After this, her mother's friend, Jeremy, arrived, told them to leave the house, and then ended Michael's life before burying the body in the backyard.
Know anything about how your father died?
I do.
Could you tell the jury?
So, it was a school day, and I'm sorry, and he...
First, let's relax, go slow, make sure the jury understands the events, okay?
Okay. It was a school morning. Me and my brother were getting ready for school. He hadn't been at the house for a while. He was kicked out, removed, and me and my brother were in separate rooms. We had pretty much been ready for school. I was eating my breakfast and I was watching TV. We had these like little plastic tables in our rooms, and I was watching TV and I heard arguing. Initially, I thought it was the TV, and then I was like, no, that's not the TV. So my room, it was my room, and then it had a bathroom and then a spare room. And so they all connected to each other, like through the bathroom. It was almost like a little like pathway. And so I heard, the fighting and the yelling, and it escalated. So when I was little, I would go through there to like sneak around. And I opened the spare room door, and in front of the spare room door was the dining room. And in front of the dining room, there was a glass door, like a sliding glass door. So I opened the door to the spare room, and I stood there, and I saw my father, and he wasn't supposed to be there. And my mom and my father were fighting, and my mom went to leave the argument, leave the porch. They were out on the porch, and he pulled her by the arm, and he pulled her into her lap onto one of the porch chairs, and he held her there. And then she was like, "We can work things out. Like we'll figure this out. It'll be different." And he was like, "No, there's no next time. There's no figuring it out." And he pushed her onto the ground. And he started kicking her in the stomach and in the back. And then he took his other foot and he put it on the side of her face. And she was screaming, and he was like saying there's not going to be another time, and that he was going to kill her at this time. And I heard my mom screaming for help, obviously, and then he put his foot on the side of her face and pushed it into the ground, and I didn't hear her anymore. And I'm sorry. And so I went to my mom's room, and I went at her end table, and I grabbed her gun, and I went back out, and I went to the door. The door was already open, and he had my mom on the ground still holding her to the ground, still kicking her. And I shot him. And nothing happened. He didn't fall. Nothing happened. And then Jeremy.
Let me stop you a little bit, Isabel. Okay, you said nothing happened. Was he standing or sitting?
He was sitting in the chair.
He was sitting in the chair?
He was sitting in the chair.
His foot on your mom's head?
Right.
You shot him. You know exactly who you shot him, or?
I'm not exactly sure. No.
Okay. Did you shoot him from the rear region, or Where do you think you shot him?
I was aiming towards his head, but I'm not sure where the bullet went.
Okay. And what happened after you fired the gun?
He was just sitting there. I mean, he wasn't moving. Nothing happened. There was no blood. There was no nothing. And then,
Let me stop you there. Okay. Let me interject here and there if I may.
okay.
Did you feel when you fired that shot that had to be done or he would have killed your mother?
Yes.
Firm on that?
I'm firm on that.
Was he using that type of force in your mind?
Yes.
It was necessary?
Yes.
Okay. What happened after you shot him? Or you believe you shot him?
Afterwards, Jeremy came, and
How long?
it was right after it happened. Like, I hadn't even had a chance to walk away, move, nothing yet. And, he came in, and he took the gun from me, and then he shot him again. And that's when he fell to the ground. And, my mom had crawled away. He fell to the ground. Jeremy shot him. He told my mom to take us out of the house, take us to school, and that we needed to leave. We are not to tell anybody. We can't tell nobody. We can't call the cops. We can't say anything, or else he was going to do the same thing to me and my brother. And he was going to, hurt us too. So we went to school.
Okay. So you leave the residence, you go to school. When you get to school, what happens?
We get to school. Nothing really happened at school. I would say I was most definitely in shock. But at the same time, it was like, because those types of events happen often, I was very used to the violence and seeing things like that. And so I was still able to perform normally at school. And just kind of, not go about my day, be at school.
What time did you get out of school?
I was in elementary school, so I think around 3.
Regardless of how horrifying it is for anyone to involve their child in such a story, even this diabolical version had 3 major flaws. First, Michael was shot only once. Second, Laurie did not meet Jeremy until 2016, while the death occurred in 2015. Third, Isabel's testimony in court seemed extremely rehearsed, as if she had been coached extensively. Personally, if you asked me what I ate yesterday, I wouldn't remember, let alone a child, who was only 7 at the time, recalling an incident from almost 8 years ago in such detail. In the end, the judge did not believe this story and sentenced Laurie Shaver to life in prison. After Laurie was sentenced, Michael's family expressed immense relief at seeing justice served after such a long wait. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. See you in the next video.